Sahana Vavatu, Sahanao Bhunaktu, Sahaviryang Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. In verse 26 and 27 of chapter 4, we are privileged to receive some guidance from Lord Krishna on how to get our life in order. Isn't that wonderful? Everyone at some point in life will get hurt. And this hurt you cannot forget because you have a memory. So it's natural that whatever happens, right, you kind of keep it in some ways or the other. So you cannot forget, but you can heal yourself. That's the good news. So because we can heal ourselves, it means that we need to, right, look at all those hurts that have come our way by different people, because they all leave a trace. And every time it leaves a trace, it actually slightly changes you or modifies your character in some ways or the other. You can't help it because it creates a self-talk in the mind, right? Someone's not kind of being fair to you, or they don't love you in the way that you feel you deserve. It creates a little bit of a complex in you, and you become the person that you are today. And see, we all start out in life where you are, suppose, a normally composed person, and somebody doesn't treat you well, and you get angry. Now, initially, it starts out as anger, but very soon somebody else does the same, similar, and it reminds you of the first time. So now the second time reminds you of the first time. And then you slowly build a story, what this means when people treat me like this, or the world is like this to me. And what happens is the person who started out as normal ends up being an angry person, right? And that becomes an orientation. So what started out as a nice, right, not a weak, but a decent, a nice person, somebody was not nice to you, and you were protecting yourself, you were not nice to them, and then somebody else was not nice to you, and then you were not nice to them, and slowly you've internalized non-niceness. Now the person becomes abrasive. I started out as a non-angry, ordinary, innocent human being, like a child, who's just trying to live the world and sees everything as beautiful and new and fresh. That innocent sight, that innocent ear of the beginning, where there's no preconceived ideas how people are and how what's possible, what's not possible. You're totally innocent and you're just new to the world. Don't you wish you could go back to those times where we didn't have those filters, where you just go out the door and you see a neighbor and already some assumptions start to, right, to percolate our being. So this is how it is. So you cannot forget this, because everything that happens to you in some way changes you. And so what happens is the mind, right, becomes non-cheerful and non-composed. What we have to do is, because this is always happening, is you have to take care of yourself. And you have to say, how is this affecting me in my life? I have to be really clear. What consequences and what bearing does this have, this anger or non-niceness, now that I am conditioned, abrasive and a little bit rough around the edges? How is this really affecting me? So this is the first question that we need to get curious about. Let me find out what trigger is causing this angry person in me or non-nice person in me. What are those repetitive triggers that are causing me to react in a way that I don't like myself to be like that. So you don't like yourself in a certain way. Then we say, how is this affecting me, this trigger? How is this not serving me? When you discover that, then you say, what different response will come from me next time this happens? Now, why do we want to do this? Because the whole vision of Vedanta wants to help you see divinity in everything. To see divinity, to appreciate divinity, to revel in divinity, like truly, not just intellectually, oh, it's divinity, it's all divinity here, and then move on with your life, but really to, instead of saying someone is small and deficient, you really see that every time I reduce someone to deficiency, they're deficient or they're weak, I'm actually denying their wholeness from them. I'm attacking their inherent wholeness. And every time I attack somebody's wholeness, that is exactly how I feel about myself. Because Vedanta says there's only Ishvara here. All that is here is Ishvara. But every time I look at somebody's flaws, what I'm really doing is I'm not seeing Ishvara, I'm seeing flaws. And every time I see a flaw in a person, like a criticism or some conversation, what I'm really doing is I'm choosing to not see Ishvara in that moment, and I'm choosing to see just a temporary appearance that is that I'm choosing to focus on. You see, your experience, what determines your experience? What you focus on. What you focus on determines your experience of life. Think about that. So you say, oh, I am, I am just so, someone says, I'm so kind of unhappy, I'm discontent. And I say, why? What is it that you focus on most of your time? It's not going to be, I'm focusing on what's possible. I'm focusing on prayers and devotion and, japa and chanting. And, I don't have, any kind of sadhana in my life. Well, obviously, that's why you're depressed, because you're choosing to focus on those stories which have sculpted you innocently. It's not your fault. This is how the world is. They have sculpted your thoughts to go from that innocent, childlike wonder into this bitter, sometimes abrasive person. So what we have to do is we have to slowly, slowly take back that power, that control, because what you want is a healthy I sense. We say that an I sense is that which relates the conditions of the body and the mind, how it thinks, how it feels. It relates that to the I am. So for instance, when your buddhi calculates, a mathematical formula, then you say, I understood, right? So that's the I sense. So that I sense, what you want is a healthy I sense. A healthy I sense means it is neither having inferiority complexes. How do you know it's an inferiority complex? Because it manifests as victim mode. It is the world's fault. She did that. He did that. I would have not been here if it wasn't for him or her or that. That is inferiority complex. And superiority complex manifests as entitlement. I should be loved more. I should be communicated more. People should see me. They should recognize my brilliance. They should talk to me in a specific way. Both of these, inferiority complex, which manifests as victim mode, blaming others, and I'm just a small being who I'm being injured, and it's other people's fault, and it's not mine, and superiority complex, where I'm entitled and I need more. Both of them are big problems today. And because they're big problems, the person doesn't have a healthy I sense. And because the person doesn't have a healthy I sense, think about this now. If the I sense that's unhealthy, that's loaded with all these superiority and inferiority complexes, which have sculpted that I sense as a product of those moments in life, right? Non-niceness and anger and so on. If the I sense is so loaded and it's not able to unload itself, how will it ever let itself go to the highest self. Look at that. I want the higher self. Even though you are that now, but I want the higher self. And here's the I sense who's not even able to unload relatively small things that it's being carrying around. How is that going to work out? It's not. That's why I know so many people who love Vedanta, really adore the self-knowledge part, but they're hanging around this tradition for too long. And then you have to question why? Why are you hanging out this for too long? And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but still trying to figure out and being frustrated that I'm not getting the final truth. The reason is so simple, because the I sense is loaded. And so what we need is a cheerful, composed, relatively healthy I sense in order to relinquish it and say the truth of that I sense is really who I am. This brings a question. What other things can we do to initiate our self-growth? What other things can we do to create or offload this I sense from all these, inferiority and superiority complexes? And this is in verse 28. Dravya yajnas tapo yajnaha, yoga yajnas tatapare, swadhyaya jnana yajnascha, yatayah samshitavrataha.
So too, there are those who share their wealth, those who follow prayerful disciplines, those who practice yoga, and those of firm vows and efforts who pursue recitation of their own Veda and self-knowledge.
Okay, so there are 4 practices which Krishna is expounding, and some of them you might reject, some of them you might take on. Hopefully there is something for everyone. So the purpose of these practices is to have this healthy I sense. So the first one is Dravya Yajna. Dravya is charity, the act of giving. Yajna is a spiritual practice. We also said 2 more words, yajna, can either mean ritual, sacrifice. Why are they usually connected together? Because when you perform a ritual, you want something, obviously. When you want something, you have to sacrifice time and not do something else. So in that sense, you have to sacrifice, right, other things to get something else. But a better name for yajna is spiritual practice. So the spiritual practice of giving or charity. There's a tendency to hold on, isn't there? Because that's how we are. My money, my time, I'm going to hold on to it. The thing with this is that if you want to continue having abundance, you need to continue giving. Because the very things that you have right now, look at this, the very life that you have right now, why do you have the life? Suppose it's, all the good parts of your life. Why are those good parts there? It is because of your contributions in the past. You don't know how it's connected, but somehow it's connected. The only reason why you have the good parts of your life right now is because of some contributions somewhere, someplace, sometime, in some manner of the past. So now imagine that right now you're saying, I'm so lucky. This is the good parts of my life I want to retain. Okay, so you want to retain the good parts of your life? How do I do that? I need to keep doing the very same thing that I've already done before. That means the act of giving, the moment you stop giving, your punyam stops. See, this is where we trick ourselves. We say, I've done so much good for my children, and I've given birth, I've raised kids, I've taught before, I've got the teachings, I've got the learnings, and I've written books, and I've done that, and I can just rest because I've done all of that in the past. That's the trick. The moment you do that, you find out your very life in that moment starts to actually go down because you're no longer receiving punyam. This is how the system is made. And it's really good that it's made like this. That means you really have no choice but to continue giving because everything in nature gives. And that's why it thrives on something else, because giving. The moment those flowers or those daisies stop being, compatible towards the bees and they can no longer be pollinated, those daisies will die out. They will become extinct. See, by not sharing, what you're really saying is, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to share because I am not good enough. I am worthless. And how is a worthless human being supposed to deserve the highest truth? See that connection? I don't share because I'm not good enough. I have nothing to give because whatever I give is poor. I am worthless, therefore. And if that is the orientation that you have for yourself, then how will such a worthless person, from that core, I'm worthless, how is that one going to receive the knowledge and say, I deserve the highest? It's not going to work out. So I hope you can see how giving, ordinary giving, sharing, being a contributor has an indirect impact on assimilating the knowledge for oneself, having a connection to Ishvara, deserving, like I deserve a life of brilliance and talent. Why do I deserve my mind to be polished and be great? Because I know that I am giving. And that is the highest expression you can do in the universe, contribute. Therefore, if you also think about a cup, suppose you're a cup that's full. Can a cup full be added onto? No. Why? Because I am too busy holding on what I have. The more you empty your cup, the more you receive new knowledge, new skills, new talents, and you don't lose out on those previous ones. So if you really feel like your cup is full, like you've heard it all, you know what the block is? You're not sharing. You're not giving enough. Can you relate this? Those times when you felt like, I feel stuck. I've been hearing this for years and years and years, but it's just not coming in. The reason for this is very simple. You're not sharing. Now, sharing doesn't have to be knowledge. Any kind of contribution, an opinion, a question, right? Anything in your manner that is giving of yourself, your time, your smile, your conversation, your patience, any of that is under the category of giving. And also, whenever you give, what you're really saying is, I'm able to part with those things that I value. What's the biggest thing that you value in your life? Your body, your life. So look at this. If I give, and when I give, what I'm really training myself is to be able to let go one day the most valuable instrument to me, my body. You see the impact here? How giving indirectly even makes death easier? Because I've been giving. This is normal. Normal to give which I value. And one day I need to give my body back to the Creator. And I have no problems with that because I'm so used to giving. That is just the way of things. It's funny when when you watch those animal shows, sometimes you wonder, how can an impala or a deer just sometimes just stand there eating next to like a crocodile, so peacefully. It's almost like it's ready in the background to give itself away any moment. The crocodile is hungry, right? So why is this? Because animals, they have this natural program, right? We just simply give ourselves. So if you look at animals, you can learn a lot from them. They are givers in every way possible. So the reason why we do not become big givers is because we start to see scarcity. Others are getting more, hold on, there's the next economy crisis. And so all these fears start to change your natural program, but that doesn't really serve you very well. So now the question is, in what ways can I give more of? In what ways can I become a contributor? This is the real question. Therefore, the summary of this, dravya yajna, as Krishna is helping us, is the more you give, the more you receive. This is the law of life. And we call this enlightened self-interest. You see, you're not really giving because you're being totally selfless. you're giving because it's a smart choice. The universe is made in a way that when you give, you receive back. And that receiving back is called self-esteem. I can give. I'm a precious human being. There is abundance in my life. And so that makes you a much more confident person about yourself.
We also give because it was never ours to give in the first place, right?
Yeah, it was never ours, exactly. Exactly. And that's a good point because it reminds me that this was not mine to begin with. And it also helps us to relinquish this mamakara, mine, 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 mine. So it's a way to relinquish this thing of attaching and leaning upon things. So think about giving, okay? Let's think about this. In what ways can you see the value of this now for yourself? How might this change your behavior in some areas or at some places that reflects what Krishna is saying? What about even giving a prayer for somebody else's well-being? You see, you may not be completely available physically. In fact, most of the time we're not. But what you can give is blessing the world, blessing your community, blessing your ancestors who are no longer with you. You don't know where they are. Maybe they're in some, loka that they're stuck, they're trying to get out of. You don't know. So I bless them. May you hear this clap. And may this clap be your light, that there is a way out. I wish you well. I do this every morning, actually. Every single morning. All those ancestors who I've never met, who have caused become many causes for this person to be who you are today. The amount of sacrifices they went through, all the hardships they went through, we don't know, but they are somewhere, so may they be blessed. So that is giving, even when you feel like there's nothing to give, you can still give your prayer to somebody else. Okay. And then there is tapas yajna. It is a spiritual practice of anything that requires you to have discipline in different areas. So what this really means is that anything you do to develop a deeper connection to Ishvara is tapas yajna. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as Ishvara is the end, like, let me do this so I can become a cleaner instrument for Ishvara. Let me do this because I want to enjoy Ishvara's presence at all times. Let me do this so that, that I can be an instrument, a clean, discerning instrument. For instance, what do I put in my body? You see, there's two ways to look at this. One thing, what do I put in my body? Why? Because I want to look sexy and I want to look strong and I want to look, kind of young. There's no benefit there at all. The moment you add, what am I putting into my body so that I can become a cleaner instrument, that my mind can be fresh and clean and sattvic so that I can appreciate, right, the realities and get the realities, that becomes a tapas yajna. Now it becomes a spiritual practice. We have something called Ekadashi on the 11th day of the moon, which is really just fasting for the sake of, right, cleaning up your mind and body. That Ekadashi is a tapas yajna. There's also called Vak tapas. Vak tapas is cleaning up your speech, right? Gentler words towards yourself and towards those that you're surrounded by. Why? Because once again, I am speaking in the light of how Krishna would speak. If Krishna was here on earth, how would the Lord incarnate speak about others? Would he say, what a buffoon, you're hopeless, you got no chance anymore, right? He wouldn't. He definitely wouldn't. What he would understand is that you're going through a hard time right now, and it doesn't define you. Your behavior doesn't define the entire person. So he would most likely look at the behavior and mention something about the behavior and not really coloring the entire person on the basis of what they've done. So anything that you use to elevate your mind for the sake of knowing Ishvara more is tapas yajna. So again, how do you convert anything to spiritual benefit? It has to involve the final goal as Ishvara. Your whole life becomes about God. because God is the only truth that is. Everything else is also God, but it has a change. It's changing constantly. Okay. Then the third one is yoga yajna. Now, this is talking about Ashtanga yoga, the 8-limbed yoga. And this is popular. Now, the question is, what makes for yoga, for Ashtanga yoga to become a spiritual practice, a beneficial spiritual practice? What has to happen? We say it has to include what's called Ishvara Pranidhanam, surrender to Ishvara. Again, bringing Ishvara into your life. So, for example, instead of having the intention of going to yoga practice so that I can have personal gain, such as better body, youthful aura, dynamic presence. Instead of thinking of that, the moment you think that and you stop there, it's no longer a spiritual practice. All benefits of yoga are lost. But when you bring in Ishvara Pranidhanam, that means surrender, that means the goal, the ultimate aim is Ishvara, so that I may know Ishvara even more than I knew Ishvara yesterday. Now it becomes a spiritual practice. Now you're gaining all the benefits that yoga is supposed to give you. Just one single component you're adding, and it changes the entire scope of benefit from personal gain into relinquishing the person and understanding something bigger than the person. The benefits ultimately is that I can know this reality crystal clear, and therefore let me become an instrument to serve you, Lord. That is why I want to do yoga. That's why I want to sit down and meditate so that my mind can be clear and enjoy your presence, which is all around me, which is also myself too. Then swadhyaya jnana yajna. So in English, this is recitation and knowledge spiritual practice. The spiritual practice of recitation and practice of keeping your mind clean. Just like your body, physical body, you have to keep clean, right? There's no way that you can just go without a shower and remain clean. There's no way. In that same manner, there's no way that the mind can remain clean unless you keep feeding it with proper foods. And so swadhyaya is like japa chanting. Japa chanting is basically taking a mantra, such as Om Tat Sat. And every time your mind deviates, then you simply bring it back to Om Tat Sat. Mind deviates, Om Tat Sat. Mind deviates, Om Tat Sat. Let's do that right now, please, for 1 minute. Close your eyes. And you're going to put your focus between the eyebrows and repeat like in this manner. Om Tat Sat. 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 Last. Om Tat Sat. Okay. slowly return. That is called japa, repetition of a mantra to help your mind return back to a single point of focus. And this helps you to have better concentration. Another example is reading thoughtful material or audios that are precious to you. So anything to deliberately keep elevating your mind upwards, because the mind is preoccupied with, in fact, in Viveka Chudamani, we said that the mind, the nature of the mind is sorrow. The nature of the mind is not happiness, it is sorrow. Why do you think this is? This is standard for everyone. There's no person whose nature of the mind is happiness, it is sorrow.
Because it always has a tendency to doubt itself. It's never sure of itself.
Exactly. Exactly. It's supposed to doubt itself. It's supposed to doubt the realities. Otherwise, it wouldn't survive. It needs to keep you alive. It needs to make you question things. So if you leave the mind as it is, if you say, I have a normal, natural mind, that normal, natural mind, so-called, is going to go downhill. The only way to make the mind stay uphill and go uphill is to deliberately give it and feed it positive practices.
Question regarding the mantra japa. Should that be verbal or mental?
The japa can be, depends, if your mind's really loud, then verbal aloud can help. If your mind's relatively silent, then you can do it completely silent. Mental.
Okay.
So it depends. But a mentally out loud japa has a lot more power for a disturbed mind than a silent japa.
Okay, so then I can choose between how my mentally I am.
Exactly.
Oh, another was, in this one we were practicing Om Tat Sat. Then there is also a very similar one, Hari Om Tat Sat. Are they interchangeable or?
Yes, so the idea is not what I chose. The idea is what one do you choose that you emotionally connect with. So I want you to find a mantra, and that mantra needs to resonate with you in a way that it doesn't resonate with anyone else. And you say, this is my mantra. I don't care what your mantra is. This is my mantra. And it's dear and near to you. That's your mantra. So a guru cannot give you a mantra. You need to find out what mantra resonates with you. And how do you do that? By discovering its meaning. Otherwise, it's all just a bunch of sounds. So this is a good point. So when we say Om Tat Sat, you're not just saying Om Tat Sat, you're thinking about every syllable. So when you say Om, what you're thinking about is that which Om represents. In this case, particular example, all forms. So in that moment, when you say Om, you're including all forms in the past, present, and future. You're just giving a little thought, like forms, any form that I see, thought forms, mental forms, physical forms, emotions that are forms, everything, just forms. And then you say Tat, Om Tat, and all those forms resolve into intelligence. We've done this example with the quantum physics video that I've done. Remember the example, Satya Mithya? So
Yeah.
all forms resolve into intelligence. So Om, forms, Tat, intelligence. So all forms that I see, behind all forms is that intelligence, all knowledge principle. And intelligence itself resolves into Sat, reality, which is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman. So therefore, Om forms Sat Ishwara Brahman. Forms Ishwara Brahman. Jagat Ishwara Brahman. So in that way, you're including everything in that one single japa. And every time you say Om, not only do you put a mental thought on all the forms, but you just recognize all those forms that resolve into Ishwara. And where is that Ishwara? In forms. Understand? So where is Ishvara not? In the very forms that I'm surrounded by. And even the brain that's saying that is also one of those forms. So it's also nothing but intelligence, right? In the form of neurons and electrical impulses. And the entire experience is known in the presence of Sat, me, right now, the knower, the Sakshi of this entire mantra, which is Brahman. And then again, Om forms resolve into tat, and that tat, the final cause is sat. So therefore, like this, every morning, every evening, whenever you have the time for 5 minutes, this is your meditation practice that is crucial for integrating this knowledge. I want to be very clear here. Vedanta isn't just about listening. Vedanta is also about meditation. That's why chapter 6 in the Gita, Krishna is going to put all of this in a meditation practice. So anyone who thinks they can just listen to this and think that they're going to get clear, no matter how convinced you are, I tell you right now, no matter how many years you've been listening to this, you will never be as clear as when you engage in a meditation practice. So meditation practice has big time benefits for you. And what is a meditation practice? Simple. I just told you now. Closing the eyes 5 or 10 minutes with a mantra and contemplating, being entirely with you and the mantra. That's all that is there, and contemplation. You, the mantra, and contemplation. And that process itself inculcates the knowledge deeper and deeper and deeper.
Are those two mantras different though? Like if Om Tat Sat and Hari Om Tat Sat, there's just one difference there, right? Hari.
Sure.
Just
The point is they're all different, they're all sounds, but what's important is to discover what it means. Okay. Now, not only what it means, but then you can shorten the definition and make it your own, as long as it's keeping with the idea. So listen, the sound is not important. What's more important than the sound is the meaning that your mind is entertaining. If I can chant Om Tat Sat for 10 million years, I will get 0 benefits. The moment I start thinking about Om is forms, Tat resolve into Ishvara, Ishvara's truth is Brahman, which is Sat, and I keep on doing that again and again, and I'm totally immersed in that contemplation for 10 minutes, and I come out, I promise you the change is going to be quite evident. Okay, so let me make this very clear. It doesn't matter what mantra you choose. What matters is mantra that is connecting to you emotionally, and 2, what is the meaning behind that mantra? And then contemplate on the meaning while doing that japa. That's the key.
What is the meaning of Om Shanti 3 times?
Sure. So the reason why we say Om Shanti 3 times is because before beginning the class, we have 3 kinds of obstacles. Everyone has, the teacher and the students. And the first is Adhyatmika. So any Adhyatmika, that means any personal issues you might encounter, such as, may the obstacle of maybe I'm, ill, maybe I'm going to get, maybe I'm not so good at remembering. Maybe, my physiology is not that optimal right now. So any personal issues, Lord, please help me for this time being, remove those obstacles that are relative to my personal life, right? You may be right now thinking about something that happened yesterday. So you're asking the Lord for at least 1.5 hours, help me to put these thoughts aside so I can be with the teaching and that I can assimilate the teachings fully. That's Adhyatmika. The second obstacle that you're asking to be removed is Adhibhautika. Adhibhautika is any environmental obstacles that you have less control. Adhyatmika, you have a lot of control, right? But Adhibhautika, I'm saying, the Lord, please help me to whatever environmental issues, maybe that might be stopping me, whatever, rain or electricity or food, that's not I'm hungry or whatever it is, right? Remove those environmental obstacles that might be hindering my progress, not just now, but at all times. Because what happens. Here's what happens often. Someone wants to go to the retreat and they're ready. And then they say, I can't go because my boss needs me. You see this? Totally unexpected. In other words, you're asking the Lord, please make the environment conducive so that I can be available for the teacher, because I'm already very busy and life is demanding my attention. So make this time available for me. And the third one is Adhidaivika. Adhidaivika is those circumstances that you totally do not have any control over. You don't have no control over that is just going over your head. Does anyone have control over that? Suppose I'm saying something and it's just going over your head. Can you now press a button and suddenly it goes in your head? No. That means there's some block, unconscious, that is stopping me, that I do not know, that is completely out of my awareness. And that block, I'm asking, Lord, please remove that block also. So remove 3 blocks that are denying me from the full assimilation and connection to this knowledge. Therefore, Om, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Andre, about the mantra, right? It's of your choice. But how about Mahavakyas? Should you go with one which has been given to you, or should you pick one which you connect most?
Any mantra becomes a Mahavakya when you start to contemplate on it, and it's there to lead you to the reality. Om Tat Sat is a Mahavakya. So is Tattvamasi, because they're all saying the same thing. So is Aham Brahmanasmi, because they're all saying the exact same things. They just have a different approach to getting there. So whether you want to choose a Mahavakya or common one, Namah Shivaya. So what is the nature of Shiva? He is the one that destroys. He is the one that, who is this destroyer? It is Ishvara in the aspect of the one that removes my ignorance. And that Shiva, I'm asking to help remove those veils in my mind. So any mantra becomes a Mahavakya when you contemplate on it, and it leads you, and it's there to help you lead you to the final reality.
So even in contemplation.
Yes, so the key behind any mantra is contemplation. It's not really the sound, it's contemplation. You can do a mantra in English or Japanese if you want. It is the words, it is the what's happening, what thought process is your mind doing that moment to help you assimilate this knowledge deeper. That is what makes it a Mahavakya. Otherwise, look at this. If Mahavakya was, if Tattvamasi was Mahavakya and Om Tat Sat was not a Mahavakya, that means all I have to do is just tell you Tattvamasi, boom, you're enlightened. No. I can tell you Tattvamasi, nothing happens, but then I can have an entire discourse on Om Tat Sat and you get it. Therefore, Om Tat Sat now becomes a Mahavakya. So, in this manner, anything can take you upwards when you turn it into a inquiry.
Does the meaning of Om Tat Sat change when it's has Hari in the beginning, or it's the same?
Hari is, Bhagavan, Hari, Parameshwaraha, so you don't need Hari because Tat is already Hari. Remember, Om forms Tat, Bhagavan, Sat, Brahman. So you're just, okay, let's do this. Hari Om Tat Sat, Hari Om Tat Sat. If that helps you, then stick with that. Or you can have maybe Om Hari Tat Sat, Om Hari Tat Sat. As long as it has a melody, a tune, it immerses you, it's pleasant, it's just, you drown in it. That is your mantra. Put whatever words,
Okay.
You can say Om, what's up, Tat Sat. Om, what's up, Tat Sat. It kind of has its own tone. Right, as long as it helps you stay.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I mainly just wanted to understand if the meaning changed, but it sounds like the meaning stays the same.
Meaning always stay the same because Vedantic tradition is always the same. So that's your responsibility to keep it. Generally, it's very simple. Forms, intelligence, consciousness. What's important is bringing your mind back because, as we said, the mind goes towards, sometimes unhelpful things. So deliberately refocusing the mind. This is very different from positive thinking. This is not positive thinking. See, when the wave in the ocean recognizes it is the water, is that positive thinking? Or is that just reality? That is reality. So Vedanta is not about positive thinking. It is just about aligning your mind and seeing what is. And so in this sense, you're bringing your mind back to the reality, like Krishna, he looks at a person who's doing something foolish. He doesn't call him a buffoon. He looks at the possible causes that might be making that person doing what they're doing. And usually it's two things. One, pain and confusion. Personal pain from childhood, which is now manifesting as irrational behavior. And two, they're just confused. They don't have all the facts. So this is usually why people do things that we call unfair. They don't know what they don't know. And two, they're operating from pain. And that pain, right, you sometimes are just unconsciously burdened by. And so you have to understand that. Otherwise, we're just going to dump these notions, unrealistic notions, onto people, which are simply not true. And second of all, every time you dump a notion onto a person, you're denying yourself Ishvara, and you're choosing to go back into samsara. Because samsara is just forms after forms after forms. Otherwise, what's the point of Vedanta? The whole point of Vedanta is to get you out of forms. You're not denying forms, you're just seeing through the forms. You're seeing deeper through the forms. That is what Vedanta does for you. Somebody is hurt. What's a healthy response? Empathy, right? They're in pain. But then the mind comes in and it says it's probably their fault. You know, they did something bad. It's their karma. See what the mind's doing now? It's taking a healthy response and it's adding its own spin out of its own loss of innocence and anger that started out in childhood. So what you have to do here is simply wish them well. That's one step better than continuing to entertain that they deserve it. If it happens to you, look at this. If you got hurt and I said you deserve it, would you think that it's fair? You know you're a good person, right? You know that it's just totally unexpected. You were doing what you could to the best of your ability, and somebody hurts you, you're hurt, and I say you deserve it. Is that fair? Is that keeping with how you're feeling? Is that what you want to hear in that moment? I deserve it. I'm a bad person. Is that what you want to hear? No. And yet this is what we do to others who we don't know. You see what we're doing? You would not want the same thing to you because you know you're a good person and you're just doing the best that you can. And somebody says, you deserve it, you're full, and they don't know the story, what happened. They don't know you, anything about you, and they're just saying, you deserve it. Now, if you would not like that, why should we do that to others? Therefore, the healthy response is empathy. Seeing they're coming from pain and confusion. Everyone is. So what I can do is I can wish them well. I can say, may you come out of this confusion. In fact, how do you deal with those who are actively doing something to injure you? But you cannot, right, tell them anything. You cannot approach them. But they're sometimes, right, doing something to speak unfairly about you. What do you do in that case? Because it's going to bother you. Suppose the report comes back to you, they're injuring you, they're saying something bad about you, but you don't really have the power or the dynamic to go to them and say something. How do you deal with that? Because what is your mind going to do when it keeps on hearing that they are gossiping about you again and again? It's going to naturally start to think, right, some thoughts about them too, naturally. So what my teacher told me, and this I was very interested in this too, she said to me, in fact, Dayananda said it, and she heard it from her teacher, is that you simply pray for them. You pray that their mind, that veil is removed from their mind. You pray that they have clarity and they realize what they're doing is wrong. It's like, why should I pray for them? Because if you don't pray, what are you going to do? You're going to do the opposite of that, right? Which is not good, which is not healthy. So the only choice you really have is to wish them well. Because what would Krishna do? He would most likely pray for you. Because you know that you're operating, or maybe you don't know that you're operating from confusion and pain. So Krishna prays for you. And you say, wow, thank you that you had the patience to go through my my ignorance, but I've gotten out of it. Thank you that you were there for me. So this means one of the best things you can do is to pray for those who are hurting you. Think about this. It's very hard to do that, but I tell you, it matures you so good when you do that, because it's totally counterintuitive, isn't it?
I would think, Andre, that you're adding another positive variable into the field if you're praying for them. So you're adding that positive field to say, I hope they gain some clarity so that they're at peace with themselves. You know?
Very good. Yes, yes. You're throwing a new cause, a positive cause, a harmonious cause, and therefore it's really punyam for you because you're able to do something that most cannot do, and that gives you a lot of self-esteem also. Okay, suppose that you try to help someone, another case scenario, and no matter what you do, you're not being listened to. But the other side is doing something that's unethical or unfair, and you cannot do anything about it anymore. You've done what you could. What do you do then? One of the things is you create a deliberate distance, right? So you have to be very clear. I'm creating a distance, but without resentment. I pray for your well-being. In fact, you may not pray for them immediately. I know it's hard, but when your mind calms down, then you can start to slowly pray for their well-being. I've experienced this myself. It was not, I just felt fraud praying for someone that I didn't feel they deserve it because the emotion was still high. But as time passed by, I realized that this is costing me happiness, because if I don't wish someone well, what's my unconscious doing? It's wishing them unwell. And when you wish someone unwell, you're actually wishing yourself unwell, because there's only one reality here, remember? There's only one here. So when I wish me unwell, I'm wishing me unwell also. So then I started to slowly pray for them, and I felt much better about it. And another thing that Dayananda says is this: why should I pray for others? Because it gives you a sense of control. If you feel like you don't have any control and you can't say anything, it's very frustrating. But when you start to pray for someone that is not on good terms with you, it gives you some level of control, at least, that you do have some say in the situation. So it helps you restore your sanity a little bit. What do we do when you've done all you could and someone's in your circle of influence and you cannot just leave, like they're your spouse or someone that's close to you, and it's not on good terms, but you cannot leave at the same time, maybe because of children or business relationships or whatever it is? What do you do then? Because a lot of people are in this situation. In this case, what you have to do is deliberately tell yourself, I choose to stay in this situation for whatever reason. And now that I have chosen to continue staying in this situation, I would choose to also protect myself. See, if you don't say this, what's the only other choice? Victim mode. They are not allowing me to evolve. They don't let me grow. I am stuck because of him or her or the environment or the boss or the manager or the kids or the wife or this. That's the only other choice. So when you reclaim back that control and you say, I am choosing to stay in this situation for the following reasons, and now that I have deliberately decided that, what will I do to protect myself? Very, very important. This is how you avoid the victim mindset in a relationship, feeling powerless. Krishna, he taught us a little bit how to do this. So Duryodhana, he's one of those characters in our life who, no matter what you do, you cannot get across to him or her, right? They're just beyond help. So Krishna decided to give Duryodhana one more chance, right? By having a negotiation and saying, return back. In fact, he went to Dhritarashtra, but Duryodhana intercepted. So Duryodhana had a little, tussle with him, and he said, give him at least back one village with 5 houses, right? I ask you, give him back Indraprastha, no. Give him back 5 villages, no. Give him back one village with 5 houses. Even if Krishna said, give them back one house with 5 rooms, it would still be a no. So Krishna saw this person is so deluded in his own mind that no matter what you say, it is impossible in this life to convince them otherwise. This is a big deal. You have to like recognize this. When have I done enough? Otherwise, you get drawn in and you go for a ride. So you have to be very clear. When have I done enough, said enough? And then you have to put a deliberate, say, I've done enough, move on. So Krishna recognized that Duryodhana cannot be saved in this lifetime. And there are people like this. You cannot save them in this lifetime. They just have to ride out the wave. Next life, they'll get a new chance, maybe as a plant or an oak tree or maybe an apple tree that you'll be eating. Who knows, right? That's how these things happen. And he then said, fine, I've done all I could. I now choose to put a boundary. I'm not going to, contact you again. Even though Duryodhana went to him again and he asked for an army. Why do you think Krishna gave Duryodhana an army? When you are on the path of self-destruction, no matter what you ask for, that's exactly what you need to continue destroying yourself. That's how things are. So Duryodhana could have asked for anything. Krishna was lucid enough to recognize he's already on the path based on his behavior and attitude, already on the path of self-destruction. And so the army is only going to help fulfill that prophecy. So here's the army for you. So this is how it works. Swadhyaya yajna technically means chanting your own Vedas. Right? This is what they used to do in the Vedic times. Chanting your Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. However, in the modern times, we can modernize this and say anything you do that heals you, that is keeping with the Vedic principles, is a Swadhyaya yajna. If I say to you, the Lord is a big being and you are a small person, is that Swadhyaya yajna? Is that keeping with the Vedas, what they're saying? That you're a small person and Ishwara is a big being? No. Therefore, it is not a Swadhyaya yajna. Okay, so let's summarize. The first one, Dravya yajna. This is the principle of charity or giving. Do you want to share a word about this? What is this for you? Why is it important to give and share?
The biggest learning curve is growing, because when you give, you learn so much from people and experiences that maybe you won't ever learn it in the where you stay, where you are. So you get to see life as well in a different way. So charity means growth to me.
Excellent, excellent. Because you meet so many people and you learn so much about yourself and it builds your confidence so you're able to meet more people.
Yeah, and then it teaches you the good side and bad side as well, how tolerant you are, how open you are. So you see both sides of yourself and you get to work on yourself and balance out. If, like, for example, you know where to draw boundaries, so you balance, you also learn balance. So that's charity for me.
You also get to see where you're coming from. Is that a honest intention? Am I having an agenda? So it lets you, right, have pure intentions too.
It's simpler than that for me. It's that it's really just the natural order of things, and that if you don't kind of go along with it and you don't, or you try to rail against it, is that you're going to find life difficult.
Excellent.
It's going to be challenging.
Excellent indeed. Okay. So now we have tapas yajna, anything that you do to bring Ishwara into your life. Yoga, this is the practice of Ashtanga yoga. And Swadhyaya, which is the practice of keeping your mind clean. The next verse will talk about prana control, breath awareness. So we will do some practice now instead of speaking. Verse 29. Apane juhvati pranam, prane panam tatha pare, prana panagati rudva, pranayama parayanaha.
So too, others who are committed to the practice of pranayama, breath control, stopping the flow of inhalation and exhalation, offer the outgoing breath into the incoming breath and the incoming breath into the outgoing breath.
Even your breath, something that's most normal, can become a great spiritual practice and help you with being more deliberate and more mindful with your thoughts. It makes your mind more calm. So if your mind feels restless or scattered or impure, breath control is the means by helping instantly regain control of that mind. Would you like that? Mind is noisy, it's scattered. Breath control, the fastest way to bring the mind back into a polished, refined, calm state. Before I do the practice, the word prana, because it's going to say pranayama. Pranayama means discipline of breath control. The word prana means here breath, and ayama is discipline. Therefore, discipline of breath control. The word prana has several meanings. And the first one is, it means life force or breath. That's why when somebody dies, in the Vedic language, we say the prana has left the body. What you're saying is breath has left the body. The second definition of prana is the warmth that you feel when the body is exerting itself, or when it's energized. That energy, that that hotness, that is prana. The third definition of prana is physiological functions. Anything that has to do with digestion, circulation, excretion, blood flow, the whole process of physiological activity that keeps the body alive, that is also prana. Now, in this specific verse, prana means exhalation and inhalation. The reason I said this is because the word prana tends to be a very vague word in Vedanta. So you have to ask the person, what do you mean by prana? Are you referring to physiological functions, to life force, to digestion, to excretion, to breath? What are you talking about? In this case, it means breath control. And Krishna prescribes 3 practices for breath control. 3 of them are apane juhvati pranam, second, prane juhvati apanam, and third, prana apana gati rudva. Let's do the first one. In short, in Sanskrit, we call it puraka pranayama. We're going to close our eyes, inhale for 8, exhale for 4, no holding. So 8, inhale, exhale for 4, and then again, inhale for 8. So let's go. Close eyes, inhale for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Completely inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Continue. 8, 4. 8, 4. Let's do the second one. Rechaka. This will be inhale for 4, exhale for 8. And the third one, Kumbhaka Pranayama. This will be, there's 2 types. Let's do the first one. It will be inhale for 4, hold for 16. Inhale 4, hold for 16, and exhale for 8. And the last one is inhale for 4, immediately exhale for 8, and then when your lungs are completely empty, hold for 8. These practices are often done with, in yoga, there's 2 locks. You call it Jalandhara and Mula Bandha. Jalandhara Bandha and Mula Bandha. Throat lock and root lock. What happens is when you inhale, you actually slightly put your chin slightly down and have a root lock. Lock your chin, but also tighten the pelvic floor to hold that energy inside. This is not necessary, but the breath is important. Verse 30, proper relationship with food. Apare niyata haraha pranan praneshu juhvati sarve pyete yajna viddaha yajna kshapita kalmashaha.
Others who regulate their food intake offer their desire to eat more unto the digestive fires. All these people who observe religious disciplines become without exception those for whom the impurities of the mind have been destroyed by the yajna.
even something mundane like eating food can have spiritual benefits. Two conditions need to be met to make your eating a spiritual benefit. The first is that think about what you're eating, how much you're eating, and at what time you're eating it. You might say there is a certain no time eating zone for me. So you say between 4 and 5, suppose you like to munch food, right? Just have snacks. You say between certain amount of time, I will not eat no matter what. Or you can say no to one less piece that you otherwise would take. Now, what this does, it helps your mind, according to the verse, is it builds discipline. If you say no to your food, then you're also able to say no to other things in life. That's the connection. So the first is you control the amount of food you take, at what time, and what food you take. And the second is, before eating, we simply think about 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 seconds about all the people that are involved and all the trucks and delivery and the oil right across the world. All of that took place to put this food in front of my plate. What this does, it helps kind of bring some connections right to your mind, because this is how the network works. So it brings order into your mind in that moment, and then you begin to eat. The second principle of spiritual benefit eating is this comes from Hatha Yoga Pradipika. This also comes from Rig Veda, where it says when you eat, 50% needs to be solids in your stomach, 25% liquids, and 25% empty. That means no full stomach ever. And what is the gain? Krishna says, Yajna kshapita kalmashaha. In other words, it's kind of a big statement, but he says your mental impurities are destroyed by this practice. Why? Because we said discipline in eating equals discipline in other areas too. There's a direct correlation there. And so then he says, and all these people who observe these religious disciplines that we have discussed in verse 26 all the way to 30, all of them, they benefit you. Why? Because they make your mind, it takes your mind out of dissatisfaction, from isolation into connection, from complaining into gratitude. So all these practices are there to help you, right, navigate your life a little bit. You got breath control, you got shama, you got dhamma, you got charity, you got ashtanga yoga, you got swadhyaya. All of these things are there for you. And next verse in 31 next week, it then says, as a consequence of having gone through these practices and you continue to go through them, the mumukshu, the seeker of liberation, is able to think clearly and relate to this knowledge. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.